Hi, guys, and welcome again to my podcast. If you're new here, welcome, and I'm your host, Betty. Hopefully, you're not beginning at one of the middle episodes to start the podcast, but if you are, then cool. Listen, stay. If you like it, go back to the beginning. So, like I said, I'm Betty, and I'm thrilled to have you here on this episode that I'm going to be talking about my life. Well, I'm always talking about my life, right? But I wanted to talk about the things that get me where I am, my past, things that shape me into the person that I am. So I'm going to be talking a lot about my background. I know that I mentioned some things, but we're going to dive a little deeper into this. And hopefully, you'll find some information inspirational, insightful, and have a laugh along the way. So just stay and enjoy the content. Remember to follow me and keep in touch. Just, stay in the loop for the podcast. So, when I was thinking about what I was going to do about this episode, I guess I was thinking about turning points. So, beginning at the beginning, right? Um, so, I grew up in Mexico. I grew up in Juarez. I was raised there for like my whole life. I did elementary, I did middle school, high school, everything there until one day my grandma said, "There's no money for you to go to college, so you're gonna have to go to the United States and try to get some financial aid." And I was like, okay, great. So, I did that. I finished high school, I graduated over there, and then I started going to take English classes. English is a second language at the community college. So I did that for a year and a half. That's usually a 3-year program, unless you do the pass track, which I didn't do. I did the regular. So I wanted to really learn. And I did it in a year and a half. I did it with summers. I basically had no breaks. I just did a year and a half of just learning English. And then after that, I started going into my basic classes for my associates, which is in business and accounting. So I have an associate of arts in business and accounting from a community college. So basically, going back again, this is just like how I started in the U.S., but I lived my life in Mexico. I lived with my grandparents. I live with my mom, but she was very young. She was 16 when she had me. So it was probably very difficult for her being a teen mom and, take care of me. So my grandma and my grandpa were always taking care of me. My grandma was always working. She was, always providing for us, and my mom would take care of me. And then she had my sister when I was 5 years old. And later on, she found a guy, my stepdad, that he was a really good guy. May he rest in peace. And I don't know, he was nice to me. I was given the choice of, do you want to go live with your mom or do you want to stay with your grandparents? At this point, I was living with my dad because, again, they were both teenagers. My grandma didn't allow them to get married because she thought that's just dumb. You don't get married just because you have a kid and you guys don't even know anything about life. So if you're going to get married to get divorced later or ruin this life's kid, it's just better you guys are separated. It's both of your guys' daughter, but she's gonna stay here with us and whatever. So my dad, I would see him, he would visit me, or I would go with him. Or I honestly don't remember when I was very, very young. He used to live very close by to my grandma's house, like one street over, and that's how my mom and him met. And then they moved to a different place, so it was easier for me to go see him because he was just living the street over, and I would just go there back and forth with my mom and my dad. And I don't know. I don't remember a lot of the early years. I just remember when he moved. Him and his mom, my grandma, they lived with my great grandma. So it was a different place. It was farther, and I would just go there sometimes some weekends and spend them there. So I didn't have a lot of time with my dad. I mean, I did, but nothing that I can say like, oh, I remember this and this. I do remember when I was like, I don't know, probably the last time I saw him, I was 11, and he came and brought me a gift for my birthday or something. I remember running, kind of like in the movies, you run and you hug your dad and you're like floating in the air. And that's probably the last memory that I have. It's kind of faint by now since I am 31 years old, if you didn't know. So they were very young, so I've never judged my parents. I mean, maybe when I was a teenager, I was like, oh my God, why are they like this? My dad also, he passed when I was 15. He had some issues with drinking and other stuff. And so one day he ended up in the hospital. I don't know, it was something about his stomach. And then he passed, so my mom had to go and identify him for some reason. I don't even remember why. I remember I was at my mom's. Actually, I was at one of my best friend's house, and we were trying to prepare to go to a quinceañera that weekend. And then I heard my mom saying, how am I going to tell Betty that? And I was like, how are you going to tell me what? And she's like, your dad died. And I was like, what? I was like literally in shock. And I think my mom was too. I mean, it was probably her first love, and they had me, and it was a special bond for them. And I remember that I got out of my friend's house and I just run. My friend's house was like 2 streets over from my house, and I just run to my house. Actually, I run to a boy's house first, because I guess I had a crush on this guy, and I just wanted to tell him and cry about it. And he wasn't there, so I just told his mom, that I was looking for him. And then I went to my house and I just sat there and cried. And then at some point, I felt like somebody came to me, and he was there. He hugged me, and for a moment, I felt a little better. That's one of those moments that you don't expect happening in your life. And I've lost so many men in my life. It's just quite difficult. I'm not saying so many, like, thousands, but I've lost my dad, my stepdad, my grandpa. So all the father figures that I ever had, I've lost them. And it was hard, to be honest. Just like growing up without a father figure. I mean, sometimes it was easy because, I don't have to deal with hey, go talk to your mom, go talk to your dad. I mean, my grandma and grandpa never did that. I was always very happy. When I was with my grandpa, it's like he was my dad. He was there. He would, ground me because I wouldn't eat, or he taught me how to ride a bike. He taught me a lot of things. So my dad, he wasn't there. So there was always someone that was there for me. And that is what I'm most grateful of, I guess, in this life. That all my family, it doesn't matter what was going on, there was always someone there for me. Always. Like if I had a bad breakup and I was just crying, I would go to my aunt's house, or I would just, by the time I actually started liking boys, my grandpa was gone. He passed probably like a year before my dad, like when I was 14. And by then I started having boys, and I'm like, why is nobody here for me to talk and tell them this boy sucks? And then they can tell me, I'll take care of that for you or something. That experience of being daddy's girl, I never had. And I mean, that's something that you miss out on. My daughter, she has Her dad, she loves him very, very much, and she's daddy's girl for sure. I mean, daddy has other girls by now too, but you know, it's just that one thing about the first child you have is like with me and my dad, I was the first child, me and my mom, and my grandparents. It was just like, it's just like a thing, a bond, something, you know? But I mean, the early years, they were, I don't know, I had a good childhood to be honest. Like I remember some times that they were hard for me, but I grew up to be a very happy person, honestly. I mean, yeah, talk about that when you have depression, anxiety, right? But growing up, like the only reason that I am sometimes so positive and kind and nice to people is because I grew up in an environment where you're supposed to be nice to people. My grandma always told me that, we have to love each other. Doesn't matter what happens. We're not gonna turn our backs on our family, and that's not what we do. So she was always very accepting. My dad would visit me, and when he would forget that, he had a daughter, my grandma would be like, "Hey, she's got things to get. She has to go to school, blah blah blah." I don't remember. Like I said, I was very young, and the last time I saw him before he passed, I was 11. So when he passed, I haven't seen him for like 4 or 5 years, and that's why a lot of my friends were like, "Well, I thought you didn't care." And I'm like, "Well, of course I care. He's my dad." But, being a teenager and dealing with all these emotions, like losing your dad, losing your like, I lost my stepdad when I was 12. I lost my grandpa when I was 14. And I lost my dad when I was 15. So everything all happened almost at the same time. So my childhood was great. I didn't live with my mom for like 5 years because that's the time that she went to live with my stepdad, and I decided I wanted to stay with my grandparents because I wanted to go to the same school, that I've always been. I wanted to stay with the same friends that I had, and I just somehow I was okay with the fact that I would only see my mom on the weekends, and it's probably what made it easier now that I don't live close to my family, because it's like I've always had to find my own family, like create little pieces of people around me and just stick with them, and they're my family. I obviously have my family that I love very, very much, and they're always been there, and I always gonna be there for them. But there's always been somebody in my life, all these people that I've collected through the years, all my best friends, all the people are still there, all the people that I met, all the people that had some influence in my life, let it be bad or good. If they broke my heart, if they didn't, if they supported me, if they betrayed me, just all those little things that happen in your life when you're growing up that shape you into who you are. So, I don't want to make this super long. I guess I would have to divide this in a few parts, because talking about the early years and talking about how I grew up, it's just like longest story. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna stop this one on, you know, so my mom met my stepdad when I was 7, and so they moved in together. My sister was 2, so she grew up with him as her dad. Her dad was not present then, and he was my stepdad. He was not my dad, even though my dad was not there. He would also he also knew my dad, and he would never talk bad about him. I was, I guess, a very responsible child. I was very mature. I was always given the choice. You want to go see your mom? You want to see your dad? You want to go to your grandparents? And it's like I always decided what I wanted to do. I mean, as far as certain things, like who I wanted to spend my time with, because it's like I've always known who the right people are around me. And that's why I'm so good at reading people. Like, I know if I have a good vibe, if I have a bad vibe, like I just know how to read people. It's just something like an intuition kind of thing. A lot of people have it. That's why I'm so into like the palmistry and reading signs and astrological things. It's just that kind of like that sixth sense that I have, that I've always had. Um, so yeah, I mean, my mom, she was with my stepdad for like 5 years. So for 5 years, I would go and have either spend the weekend with them, or every Sunday, me and my grandparents would join them to have dinner, to go eat somewhere. My stepdad had some money back then, so he would always pay for food. He even bought my grandparents a car so they would be able to take me to school. Because when I was young, I mean, they didn't have a car. I mean, Christmas was amazing, honestly. I do that at Christmas now with my daughter, and I get so many gifts for her. And Christmas for me back in the day, I had 5 cousins. Wait, no, 4 cousins. And it was just me, until my sister was born. After my 4 cousins were born, my sister was born. So, it was not a huge family, but we always had so many gifts. My grandma always made sure that we always had so many gifts. And I don't know. I guess my grandma created a great thing for me and for us, for everybody. And I'm very grateful for that. So, yeah, my mom was with my stepdad, and then he passed. So she moved back with us. And then she was, I guess she didn't have any more reins on me to be like, oh my God, I'm your mom. Of course, she was my mom. But by then, I was already shaped into someone. And I just kept shaping myself. And my family's always been proud of me. At least I hope, Some people used to call me the golden child. Not the greatest nickname, by the way. Especially when you realize that they're just making fun of you because they think you're better than them. And that's not who I am at all. But again, so I guess there was a lot of talk on this episode, and I barely started in my life. So we're gonna continue the next episode with the rest. So I'm gonna stop here when I was 12 and I lost my stepdad and my mom came back. So by then I already had my sister Andrea, my sister Isabel, and my mom was pregnant with my brother Richie when my stepdad passed. So that was quite something. We were not very rich. My grandma's house, it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house where me and my siblings and my mom and my grandma would live. And honestly, I grew up fine. I mean, I didn't have everything in the world, but I did. I had all the love that I needed. I have all the things that I needed. I went to school. I had shoes. And I'm very grateful for that. I don't regret anything, and I'm not ashamed of how I grew up at all. So, that's something that we all have to embrace. We have to embrace the way we were brought in. Obviously, if you have a difficult situation, you had a difficult situation and you're not proud, that's good too. We all just have to realize that sometimes the good and bad things that happen in our lives are what shapes us in the future. So I will give you more in my next episode, you guys. So for now, I bid you au revoir and I love you. Mwah. See you on the next one.